Hello, anatomy friends. This is Dr. Alsop, and in this video, we will be discussing the different parts of a long bone. And there are many components that we need to understand now in order to better engage in further discussions of the skeletal system as well as the joints. So let's get into it. We have three learning objectives that we will be working through in this video, so try to answer these as we work through the upcoming slides. There are three major regions of a long bone. You will have the diaphysis, the epiphysis or epiphyses, and the metaphysis or the metaphyses, depending on how many that there are. So we're going to start with describing the diaphysis. And the term diaphysis means growing between, meaning that the diaphysis grows between the epiphyses. And you sometimes hear this region referred to as the shaft of a long bone or the body of a long bone. They all mean the same thing. And this is going to be the longest portion of the bone. It's mostly cylindrical in shape, and it is composed of mostly compact bone, but importantly, it has a medullary cavity or an open space within. Epiphysis means growing upon. Think growing upon the diaphysis. And there are typically two epiphyses on a long bone, but there can be more epiphyses in more complicated long bones. When there are two, these are typically located on the proximal and the distal ends of the long bone. And epiphyses are typically enlarged in comparison to the diaphysis, so it's wider, allowing for additional surface area, which is important in terms of joint formation. Epiphyses are composed of mostly spongy bone. As you can see in this illustration on the right, it will always have that shell of compact bone, though, on the external surfaces. And having all of this spongy bone helps to reduce the weight of this region or the regions of multiple epiphyses. The metaphysis is the region between an epiphysis and the diaphysis. And because there are typically more than one epiphysis, there are typically more than one metaphysis. And when bone is growing in length, so during childhood, the metaphysis region will contain what's referred to as an epiphyseal or a growth plate, which is a type of cartilaginous joint called a synchondrosis. And we'll talk about the different types of joints in an upcoming video. Now, this epiphyseal plate is composed of hyaline cartilage and will actually grow to allow for bone length to occur. So you need the growth plate to grow before that can be replaced by bone. Eventually, all that cartilage will be replaced by bone, and at that point, the bone is no longer capable of growing in length. And there is evidence of that growth region left even when it's completely replaced by bone. And this is called the epiphyseal line, which you can see in this illustration on the right. In the case where there's only an epiphyseal line, the metaphysis is a considerably smaller region than it was when the epiphyseal plate was present. There are four associated structures of long bones that we will additionally discuss. These are not actually bony tissue, but they're so closely related and important in terms of bone health that they need to be discussed as well. So we will start with the periosteum, which is going to surround the external surface of bone. So if you ever see a bone and it looks kind of glistening, it is the periosteum that is giving that glistening appearance. And it's going to be composed of two layers. As most outer layers are, the outer layer of the periosteum is there for protection, and it's composed of dense, irregular connective tissue. The inner layer of the periosteum is mostly cellular, and you will have osteoblasts, you'll have osteogenic cells, and osteoclasts present in this area, so a very active and very important area. Some of the collagen fibers of the outer layer of the periosteum are going to be continuous with tendons, and importantly, the periosteum is going to attach to underlying bone by what's called perforating. Sometimes you'll hear the eponym Sharpie's fibers. So the periosteum provides strong attachment and continuity from muscle to tendon to bone. The endosteum is located more internally. It will line the medullary cavity, which is the middle area of the diaphysis that we'll talk about more in a minute. It will also line the surfaces of the spongy bone, like you can see in this image on the right. And it will also line the bony canal system. And it's very similar to the periosteum, but it's lacking the outer, more fibrous layer. So it's really just that single layer of cells like osteoblasts and clasts with a small amount of connective tissue. We will talk about articular cartilage in a bit more detail when we discuss synovial joints, but it is a vital because it is a vital part of the overall joint complex, but it's very much associated with the long bone, so we will introduce it here. Articular cartilage is just a thin layer of hyaline cartilage that is covering an epiphysis where there is joint formation. So this is going to be true of all synovial joints. And this cartilage is important in reducing the friction that occurs with joint movement and also prevents bone-on-bone contact, which can be quite painful. Now, unlike bone, articular cartilage lacks blood vessels, or in other words, it's considered avascular. So it's very, very limited in damage repair, and that's what's commonly what happens in osteoarthritis, which we will discuss in the joint section. Finally, there is the medullary cavity. Sometimes you'll hear marrow cavity, which is more of a space than a structure. It's a cylindrical space as it lies within the diaphysis. And in adults, this space is filled with yellow bone marrow as well as blood vessels. And since this space is not filled with that relatively heavy compact bone, it really reduces the weight of long bones in addition to the spongy bone and the epiphyses. And so this is important in allowing that free movement of the bones. All right, so hopefully we have gotten some of these terms down because we will be using them quite a bit as we continue our discussion of the skeletal system. So let's do a quick knowledge check with the practice question. So, articular cartilage is typically located on what part of a long bone? Take a moment, pause the video, and when you're ready, I hope that you have landed on the correct answer being B, or the epiphysis. Articular cartilage covers the ends of a long bone, and that's particularly true when there is joint formation, and we know that the ends of a long bone are the epiphyses, typically at those proximal and distal ends. The diaphysis isn't correct. That's going to be the body or shaft of the long bone, so no articular cartilage there. The medullary cavity is within the diaphysis, so again, incorrect. The metaphysis is located between an epiphysis and the diaphysis, so no articular cartilage there. And the periosteum is going to be that connective tissue and cells that surround the outer surface of the bone, except where there is articular cartilage. So E is not going to be the correct answer either. All right, excellent. Hopefully you feel good about this and can describe the general locations and compositions of these regions or structures of a long bone. I thank you so much for your time and attention.